Good evening. It's a Friday evening, and we're going to be talking about a very interesting subject for me. I hope it's going to be interesting for you as well. We're going to be talking about three entities or three classes of entities that belong to the indigenous spiritual understanding of our ancestors that go back thousands of years. So let's just be clear about what we're talking about. You know, I don't identify as a lot of things. You know, I don't identify as a pagan. I don't identify as a heathen. These are modern terms. I'm not into magic or Wicca. I'm not against them. I don't really know a lot about either of them, so I have nothing against them. But I don't identify with them because I don't see them as extensions of our pre-Christian indigenous spiritual path. However, what I found out when I started seeking to rediscover and to uncover the true depths of my ancestral spiritual path, I found that a lot of our ancestral spirituality is still in our modern culture. Sometimes it's hidden. Elves and dwarves are two classes of beings that are still very much thought of in modern society. And we see that with, now video games. And this is all new. If somebody's been born in the last 20 years, it may not, it may not seem like something, out of the ordinary because they've been brought up with Lord of the Rings. They've been brought up with video games, and so you see dwarves and elves all over the place. But when I was a kid, you didn't. When I was a kid, elves and dwarves were cute little things. Like you see it in Santa's elves. You still see that. You have these idea of little tiny, look like leprechauns with pointy hats and pointy shoes and green skin and pointy ears, and they run around and they build toys for Santa. Or the Keebler elves, who live in a tree and who make cookies. And we think of dwarves as being little people. In fact, I don't know if it's PC or not, but we call little people, they're classes of human beings who are shorter than average, and they're called dwarves. And that obviously goes back to that whole idea. So this is a result of what happened during the Middle Ages, when Christianity was very strongly seeking to destroy the influence of the indigenous religion. I'm using these words very specifically because we're not brought up to understand that. We look on other cultures, like we look on Native Americans, and we think of their indigenous religion, and we think of people in third world countries or places like that, and we talk about their indigenous religion. And when we talk about it like that, there's a level of respect and profundity, even if somebody is, let's say, a Christian who has an agenda to talk you out of your religion and talk you into theirs. And if you talk about their indigenous religion, there's an understanding that this is the religion that these people have had for thousands and thousands of years. It's deeply ingrained in their culture. And when I say our, I'm speaking of people of European descent, but really it's not like so much. I don't have a racialist bias towards it, because the truth is that if you live in the Western world, the United States or Europe, regardless of where your ancestors are from, especially if you're, third, fourth, fifth generation, then your culture is European, even if you may be ethnically of another background, or if you're like many people, you're of mixed background. But it is still an indigenous belief system, and I keep saying that to get our minds in the track of thinking of it in terms of it having value. So I could talk about that for a long time, but I don't want to do that right now. Let's talk about elves and dwarves. So elves and dwarves are often, as I've said, in modern understanding, they're confused with each other. Not so much now, because the Lord of the Rings has really changed people's understanding of elves and dwarves. And Lord of the Rings, if you're not familiar with where it came from, was based upon Norse mythology. Norse mythology is the last remaining account of the indigenous religion of Northern Europe, specifically the Germanic tribes of Northern Europe. And even though Catholicism worked very hard to wipe this out, they couldn't. So much so that we still talk about dwarves and elves to this day. And even though the church sought to minimize them, literally make them into tiny little cute little beings that you could make fun of, because that's what was going on. That's what the Catholic Church was doing. Now, we don't realize that when we think of little tiny elves or little tiny dwarves. That was done as a result of the Catholic Church literally trying to minimize them into cute little nothing beings. But let's just talk about elves, for example. There was a specific day or time of the year, maybe more than one day of the year, where elves were worshipped. It's called the Alpha Blot. Blot means blood, so it means sacrifice of blood. They were sacrificing and having festivals and rituals to the elves, to the shining ones. The word elf comes from the same word where we get the word Alp for the Alps. It means shining. The Alps, I believe, during the Ice Ages would have been like giant, shining ice pyramids that you could have seen for hundreds and maybe thousands of miles. And so they got the name Shining as that. The elves are the shining ones. And then we have the dwarves. So what are the dwarves? Dwarves are not little people. But it's interesting that the modern understanding of dwarves now, which we get from the Lord of the Rings, is that the dwarves are these short, human-like beings that are extremely powerful, and they are very magical. And it is in the workshop of the dwarves that magical things are created. In fact, the gods, all of the tools of the gods are made by the dwarves, including Thor's lightning hammer. So these are very powerful beings. These are not, little tiny, cute little beings with pointy hats and pointy shoes. That's not what they are. They are seen as very powerful beings. Now, in the mythology, dwarves are not talked about as being little at all, but it shows a symbolic understanding of them, because we look at them and they're short people, which means that dwarves really are humans in the making. But then the question arises of, where do dwarves live? And for this, we can look in the mythology, and of course mythology is not meant to be taken literally. So when we talk about the dwarves living under the mountains, It doesn't necessarily mean that dwarves, if you go, tunneling under a mountain, that you're going to find a dwarf city. That's not necessarily what that means. It means subterranean. What is subterranean? Under the surface. There is an old healing magical treatise that was written during the Middle Ages. It was during the very early parts of Christianity in England, and it is called Against a Dwarf. And I believe in Old English it is with dwergam, against a dwarf. With used to mean against. What we now use the word with used to be mid, right in the middle, mid. They still, in German, they still use mid for with. But with meant against. With dwergam, against a dwarf. And it gives spells. Now they've been Christianized. The spells are prayers to this, that, and the other thing, but it has something to do with, if I remember, there's like a spider this. There's all this shamanic stuff in it that's intermixed with Christianity, and it was done as a magical spell to heal somebody who was being afflicted by a dwarf that was attacking them. And it's very clear in that the dwarf is attacking the person in their dreams. So the magical spells are to empower the person to be able to fight the dwarf off in their dreams. So this tells us where dwarves live. Dwarves live in the subconscious of the human mind. Now, since dwarves, as we know from the mythology, are the beings that create the physical universe, they are the beings that create all of the magical weapons that the gods use. This tells us where we get that power. The power to manifest and to create is in the subconscious mind. So there are three minds, if you don't know. There is the conscious mind. Your conscious mind is what is listening to me right now. There is the subconscious mind, which is in between the conscious and the unconscious. And then, of course, there is the unconscious mind. The vast majority of times that people use the word subconscious, they mean unconscious. The unconscious is where all of your unresolved karmic issues are, all of your fears, all of your assumptions about reality. This is in your unconscious. Unconscious means it is not conscious, that you are not aware of it. You can't just choose to access your unconscious. I'm going to go into my unconscious. You can't just choose to do that most of the time. Subconscious, on the other hand, is different. The subconscious mind is not on the conscious level, but it is directly accessible by your conscious mind. You can tap into most of your memories through the subconscious. You can tap into your phone number, your address, your social security number, your mother's birthday. These kinds of things are files in the subconscious that just sit there. I don't walk around thinking about my birth date or my social security, but if you ask me, I can give it to you immediately because it's sitting there in a file in my subconscious mind waiting to be accessed. The unconscious mind, you can't do that, which is why you can have things like unconscious rage. The majority, if not all, illness is simply unconscious rage. It is rage that you are not consciously aware of. You are not consciously aware of it because to become consciously aware of the rage that you have would be intolerable to your conscious mind. You have decided that is something that you either can't or won't deal with for whatever reason. I'm not judging it. We all do it. And so you've pushed it down into your unconscious mind where you cannot access it consciously, but it still sits there stewing. And because you're not consciously dealing with it, that rage goes into your physical body. In some cases, that rage will go into the spirit world, and you will create a spirit being with that rage that will act as a ghost, or what do you call those things? Things that move things around, and what are those beings called? You know what I'm talking about. So before I go any further, welcome to anybody who's coming on to the live Q&A. If you're watching this live, then please be aware that the only way that I want you to interface with me is through questions. I know that a lot of these Q&As, people come on and it's a free-for-all. People type in whatever the hell they want, and people have these long discussions. I'd prefer that you didn't do that. I only want to interact with people who have questions. The way that you ask me a question is by typing the word question and then put your question after that. If you're new to the channel, you might want to wait until you ask a question, because the majority of your questions will be answered in my channel. So you'll have to go and spend some time watching my channel and studying what it is that I teach before you can ask an educated question. If you ask a silly or stupid question, I am going to make you aware that I feel that way. If you ask me a dishonest question, I am going to ruthlessly demolish your question. By dishonest, what I mean is not asking from an emotional place of awareness. If you try and give me an overly intellectualized question because you have something you want to say, I'm probably going to ruthlessly slash that to pieces. Very oftentimes when I do answer questions, I am very direct and I am very ruthless. And the reason I do that is because I have a very short amount of time to deal with you, and I want to get right to what it is I think you're really trying to ask, or what it is that's really going on under the surface, and help you resolve that. If you want me to be less ruthless and nicer, then you probably have to get a session with me where I can spend more time with you individually, and then we can slowly get to the root of your situation and your question. So we are going to be talking about the relationship between dwarves, elves, and human beings. Of all of the entities in the 9 worlds, dwarves, elves, and human beings have a very close connection, and they are connected through spiritual evolution. That is why there's no mistake that I just grabbed a random screenshot off of Google that showed a dwarf, an elf, and a human being standing next to each other. Because even in that mythology of the Lord of the Rings, they have a close connection. And so we're going to be talking about that. And as you saw in the opening part, or on the whatever the little screenshot picture there, the thumbnail, it says that we will all become elves. That is our destiny. Our destiny is to become ascended masters, to become shining ones. Ascended masters, the elves, were in fact human beings. So this tells us the minds that are inhabited by or used most by each of these classes of entities. For human beings operate in their world from their conscious mind. That's where the seat of awareness is, in the conscious mind. For the dwarves, they operate in the subconscious mind. That is where they have their power. The elves operate in the higher mind, your higher self. The elf is literally the higher self of the human being and communicates directly to that. In order for a human being to function at his or her highest vibration, the communication between the elves and the dwarves and the conscious mind of the human being has to be intact. Left to himself or herself, a human being will have a functioning, they don't even have to try. You will have this three-way communication going on all the time. That is not what happens with many people. And even though those who are in that state where the communication is not fully functional between the higher self, the lower self, and the conscious self, even though they don't know that they have had anything to do with that disruption, in order for that communication to get broken, it is done as a result of repetitive, deliberate choices of the human being. It is done by deliberate, repetitive choices of the human being to separate themselves from their true nature. So then we get to the third being or class of beings in this, which is human beings. The original name for human being in the indigenous tradition of Northern Europe was man. Man does not mean male human. It does now, but it didn't used to. Male human was ver. Latin, virile. Same thing in Sanskrit, vir, I believe. And it means, now we use it as in the word virile, meaning masculine. But that man used to just be ver. Human being was man. Man is the word for the moon and the mind and human. This is man. So that will tell you what human beings are. Human beings are the mind. The mind is not the intellect. The mind is the part of you that has the ability, like the moon, to reflect the light of the sun. Sun was called Sawul. Sawul is the word for soul. So the sun is representative of the soul. So that means human beings, man, reflect the Sawul. They reflect the soul. That is your essence. And your greatest power is your meditative mind. This is why I go to so much trouble to chastise people when I think that they're stuck in their intellect. Now, that's not their fault. That's the result of what has happened over the past 2,000 years of our ancestors separating themselves from their indigenous spiritual tradition. In order to separate yourself from yourself, you have to use the intellect. The intellect means to pick apart from among. So whenever somebody analyzes everything and does not bring emotions into it, they're stuck in their intellect. That's why I say if you're going to ask a question, please ask a question from your emotional self. When you ask from your emotional self, you make it about yourself. When you talk about something in the third person and it gets overly intellectualized, you are trying to avoid your emotions. So the moon is also emotions. So that means to be a human being is to be an emotional being. It means that you operate from that. But the mind is not just the emotions. The mind is the reflective, meditative mind that has the ability to, like the moon, rise above the earth and look down on it from a distance and shine the reflected light of the sun onto it and be able to make conscious, constructive decisions without being controlled by emotions. But emotions have to be acknowledged. So whenever you're talking to somebody who is hyper intellectualized and looks for ways to avoid their emotions or takes pride in not being emotional, then we're dealing with somebody who is not a man, who is not a human. Because emotions have to be part of the thinking process. Emotions allow us the ability, when used through the mind, this is extremely important. Emotions, when filtered through the mind, allow us to have empathy for others. So somebody who does not have empathy for others, the emotions that they do express will be of a very violent nature. They'll be the brainstem, the reptilian brainstem. There'll be anger, lust, greed, control, fear. These are not emotions in the sense of man. These are reactions from the reptilian brainstem. It's all about survival. So the mind, the emotions that are connected to the mind are higher than that. They're the higher brain emotional things. And without that, you cannot have empathy. So human beings, among all other things, the one thing that makes a human being is the ability to have empathy. Meaning, I understand what that person is going through. And compassion, kindness, love, these kinds of emotions that are, that go beyond the self, that go beyond our narcissism. This is the highest expression of man. This is what human beings are destined to be. So all of these three groups of entities work together: the dwarves, the elves, and the men. And I will even go so far as to say that it is my belief, based on my personal reflection as well as my study of the mythology, that this is the trajectory, that everybody who was a human was once a dwarf. And when dwarves are able to connect to the elves and receive information and training from the elves, they become man. Human being, man, after he or she has gone through all of their human lives that they need to live in order to fully experience all of their desires and fully experience what it is to be human being. And after if they've chosen to go to Valhalla and fight with Odin, or if they've gone to Folkvang, which is where Freyja takes some of the other slain in battle, which I believe the closest, this is, my feelings might change on this now, but I believe that the human beings that go to Valhalla are meant to be spiritual warriors, where they spiritually go and fight for conscious awareness of the human race, against negativity, against ignorance. And I believe that human beings that die in battle and go to Folkvang become what we would think of as being guardian angels. And then, when the human soul has achieved everything it needs to achieve in a way where they aren't human anymore, they're past human incarnations, and they've done whatever other things they need to accomplish, the final state of them is to be an elf. Autocorrect just turned it into self. I didn't say self, I said elf. But so that is the progression. We start off as dwarves. Dwarves are beings of pure energy, and they are beings of emotion. They sometimes are an emotion. We see this in the Snow White and the Seven Dwarves, which is, taken from a Germanic fairy tale, which is another way of saying myth. And each one of those 7 dwarves represent different human states of mind and emotion. Sad, angry, happy, whatever. That is an extension of what dwarves are. They are emotional beings. They're made up of emotion, pure emotion. And so when these emotional beings then get conscious awareness, then they have the opportunity to become a soul, a human soul. And then they get to be incarnated. And then they go through all of, get all of their emotional needs met. And then they get to move on to the next levels. So this is what we're going to talk about today. If you have a question, please feel free to leave it. I'm happy to answer whatever questions you have. And I will take a brief hiatus, and then I will be right back. Okay, welcome back. All right, so let's take a look and see what kind of questions we have. All right, so Torn Legorf, question. Is regret or second guessing myself a form of dwarf? No. Nope. Regret or second guessing yourself, I would put that into the category of unresolved conflict with you following your soul desire. Regret or second guessing is self-directed negativity. Regret really isn't regret like, oh gosh, I wish I hadn't done that. It's more like you're beating the crap out of yourself for doing something. And it depends on if it's something that you wanted for yourself or if it's you regret how you treated somebody else, which is usually guilt, and guilt is anger. Guilt is self-directed anger. You're really angry at the other person, even though you feel guilty. Your guilt is really anger towards the other person. I'm not judging it. I'm just trying to bring it to awareness. I don't know why you make that connection, but no, regret and second guessing is not a form of a dwarf. Poltergeist, that's the word I was looking for. Thank you. Yes. A poltergeist is actually when you have one of the ways that self-directed negativity can be manifested. Most often, self-directed negativity in the unconscious mind results in disease of various kinds. And in extreme cases, when somebody's really trying to avoid horrific trauma, like repeated torture or sexual abuse or emotional abuse, these things actually, when they're pushed down, when the rage becomes great enough, it can squeeze out of the body and become a poltergeist. And you'll notice that in those instances, lots of times people who suffer from poltergeists, they suffer from those when they're asleep, or somebody in the house will fall asleep and then the poltergeist will appear. It's because their unconscious mind is releasing that rage in the form of, a projection. All right, so what else do we got here? Rommel Blacklip, question, does the Hool breath transmute unresolved emotional issues? The Hool breath is extremely healing. It's one of those all-purpose practices, and among other things, yes, it will help you become conscious of unresolved emotional issues. It's an extremely powerful form of meditation. It's an extremely powerful form of energy work. But yes, it is designed to balance and heal you on all levels. So yes, that will be one of the results of it, is to help you, heal unresolved emotional issues. Zach T, question, how do we synchronize with the moon? It's a huge question. Should we follow Western or Vedic for any particular? I'm not sure what you're asking me. The short answer to that, I don't know how it is best for you to synchronize with the moon. What do you mean by that? Do you want to synchronize with your mind? Do you want to operate from your meditative mind with the moon itself? So I would need to look at your chart, go to astrology.thunderwizard.com, and depending on your chart, I can tell you how you can best work with the moon, which is, again, your mind and your emotions. For me, the moon is my Dharma Devata, which is why I wear a moonstone. It means that the moon is the planet that guides me to my highest path. And the moon for me is in my first house, which means my physical body. So that means if anybody has moon in the first house, it means that they need to move, physically move, in order to process their emotions. In order to see things objectively, they have to move. That is why I have to exercise regularly. If I can't go surfing for whatever reason, then I have to go to the gym and I lift heavy weights to push all that out. And I'm one of those annoying people in the gym that makes a bunch of noise. I'm constantly grunting and groaning, and I can't help it. I don't try to do it. I just am. But when I'm done, I always feel better, because in order for me to be able to let my emotions flow, I have to physically move. That's why I did internal martial arts for so many years, which meant just continuous repetition of doing forms and katas and qigong and tai chi, all that stuff. I have to do it, or I'm not. I'm just not a happy person. How you synchronize with the moon? That's a huge question. I don't know. I'd have to look at your chart to tell you. And I'm not even sure what you mean by synchronize with the moon. Are you asking me about some kind of magic? Are you asking me how to synchronize with your emotions? So I'm not quite sure I know what you mean. I'm a Vedic astrologer, so why would I say you should follow Western astrology? You didn't even say astrology. Should we follow Western or Vedic? I don't know what you mean. I assume you mean astrology. I don't know anything about Western astrology, so why would I tell you to do that? I only know about Vedic. Torn Legorf question. I most often regret speaking, commenting, and asking questions. Often I wish I was like that Deadpool character in that I had no mouth at all. Can you give me your insight? I don't know what to tell you. There's a lot of stuff there. It sounds like you need counseling, if you want my honest opinion. You regret speaking, commenting, and asking questions. Is that because you ask stupid things? Is that because, why would you hate yourself for that? I mean, regret means that you hate yourself after the fact. After you've done it, you criticize yourself. So that tells me that you grew up in a home where you weren't, if you spoke or asked questions, then you were ridiculed or, criticized in some way. And so now you do that in order to perpetuate unconsciously trying to get whoever's love, your parents, I'm assuming. So I don't know why you feel that way. I'm sorry you do. My insight is you should probably talk with somebody about it and get some counseling about it. Is my insight about it. Jessica Johnston question: how do I work spiritually with unconscious rage? How can it help me in any way? How do I work spiritually with unconscious rage? Well, unconscious rage means that you're not aware of it. So it's like having, an angry bull in your basement. It's not something you want to leave alone. So it's not so much that you work with it, like, use it to help you. You have to become conscious of your rage. So that's where it starts. And again, this is not an easy thing. This is what, the thing about shamans and teachers and wizards is that, traditionally speaking, these were the psychologists of the tribe. And in my experience, a good shaman has more tools than your average therapist, because the shaman has more than just the psychological understanding of what things symbolize and what they mean, but he or she will have tools, spiritual tools, to help you. This is very popular, soul retrieval, which means that, you're fragmented. The way you become fragmented is when you walk away from your true identity. You walk away from your true identity most of the time in order to get somebody else's love or approval. You can do it, you can fracture yourself if you go through tremendous trauma. If you've been brutalized in different ways, then you separate in order not to deal with the horror of, what's happening to you. So it's all the same thing. It's this is why soul retrieval is so popular, because people feel fractured. And so a true shaman has the ability to help bring that together. So ideally, you want to become conscious of your rage. It's not like a tool that you can use to achieve something, which is what your question sounds like. It means you need to get honest with yourself about why you're angry with yourself. Depression is rage. Depression is you're really furious at somebody. And this is usually somebody that you live with. It's a parent, it's a spouse, it's a sibling, and you're furious with them because of the way, whatever, who knows why. And it's intolerable to live with that rage, or if you express that rage, you get beat down even harder, so you turn that rage inward. It goes into the unconscious mind. But until you can become conscious of it, you'll never be able to be free of it, and you'll always be acting in ways that take you out of integrity of your highest self. I know this sounds all hoity-toity, but anyway. Let's see, what else do we got here? Zach T question: I have mercury fillings in my teeth. So Zach T, you're new to the channel? Yes? I would recommend that you watch my videos. If you don't know how to search for somebody's videos within their channel, learn how to do that. And most of your questions will be answered by that. I'm going to be honest with you, this is a very superficial kind of a question. I don't deal with this kind of superficial stuff. I have mercury fillings in my teeth. Does this disrupt the aura? Can I still heal my spirit and mind? I mean, this is very superficial, new agey kind of stuff. If you really want to know what I teach, I would prefer that you ask questions that are connected to what I teach, so that I can give you an educated answer that will be helpful for you. Asking me about things I either know nothing about or don't care about doesn't serve you. So I have mercury fillings in my teeth too, and I've had them for 40 years. I think I'm doing okay. So I think you're all right. Now, that doesn't mean that there's heavy metals in there. So, some people say that getting your mercury fillings out and having them replaced is healthy and helpful, and I'm all for that. I don't have enough expertise to really know what the hell I'd be talking about, but I don't think that what you're asking me is really a question that I would want to engage in. So we'll move on. Ghost in the Machine. Question: are there dwarves that do not have man's best interest at heart? Of course. Do you have emotions within you that don't serve you? Do you have subconscious and unconscious drives that don't serve you? So if you are just tuning in now, then you missed when I talked earlier about what dwarves are. Dwarves are made up of life force energy, specifically emotional energy. So emotions are life force energy. And this is why dwarves feed on emotions. They also feed on life force energy. So when your dwarves are in alignment with the elves, then doing things like qigong and energy work gives you ability and energy to manifest your reality or create magic, because that's what the dwarves do. So you're asking me, is it possible for your subconscious mind to work against your best interest? Of course. But it's not happening to you. That's a result of choices that you make. And the easiest thing to do, the easiest thing to do to make everything work physically, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, is to always follow your highest joy and to take action to achieve that joy, regardless of how frightening or difficult it is. If you do that, everything else will align itself because you will be operating from your soul. Your soul. See, when I write soul, the spell check wants to automatically change it into soul. It is right to do that because that's what that is. We talk about spirituality. We talk about higher awareness. People want to spend all times meditating and opening their third eye so that they can have higher awareness. That's going about it the hard way. The easiest thing to do is to listen to what gives you the greatest joy, to take action on it and go do it regardless of how frightening it is, and you will be in alignment, and you will be in your highest awareness, and you will be connected to the elves, and the dwarves will be able to listen to the elves, and you will be conscious of all of that, and you will be able to make conscious choices and decisions. We're not designed to do all this self-examination. We do this self-examination because, we walk away from our soul. We walk away from our joy. And when we do that, we become fragmented. And in order to get ourselves back together, we need to do meditation, and we need to do mantra, and we need to, talk to a therapist, and we need to do all this stuff in order to get ourselves back aligned again. And then we sort of hold ourselves together by scotch tape, and and so I'm saying, I do all these things myself because I'm as human as you are. But the easiest thing to do is what I just mentioned. It's when you can't do that easily that you do all the other stuff. Or like me, you do it because it's fun. I do energy work because it feels good. I do mantra. Well, I do mantra because I need to, because I need to stay consciously aware, and I need to work to do that. I start coming apart just like everybody else. But I also do it because it's fun. Okay, what else? That's it. Okay, Jessica Johnston, you're new to the channel? Yes? She says she had said something earlier about how do I use my unconscious rage, and I analyzed that for a little bit. And I usually don't respond to people, justifying or responding to that, but sometimes I ask rhetorical questions, and they're rhetorical. When I'm asking you, what do you mean by that? I'm really not wanting you to give me a spiel about what you meant by that. But she says, I know what is happening. So when somebody says, I know what is happening, that usually tells me that they're overcompensating. So my first reaction to that is you probably don't know what's happening, but you want to show to us that you don't want to act or appear to be out of control or unspiritual or something. So you say, I know what is happening. I just had hoped I could use it in some way. See, why this proves to me you don't understand what's going on, because unconscious rage is something that needs to be dealt with. It's not something to be used. If you know what is happening, meaning you know that you have unconscious rage, meaning you know that there are things that you're rageful about that you're not aware of, and you're looking at it as a tool to be used, and you're wanting to figure out how to use that, that's bypassing the whole idea of becoming aware. So how can you use something you're not aware of? How can you use your rage to become more aware? The way you don't use your rage to become more aware, you just become more aware. And as you become more aware, the rage will surface. And you will have to battle with yourself about whether or not you want to face it. And most of the time, this doesn't happen consciously. People struggle with it, and it is a real battle. There is a force within you that looks like this. I call him the 2,000-pound gorilla, but he's actually more like, 200,000-ton gorilla. This is your unconscious mind. When something goes into your unconscious, there is the gorilla. The gorilla sits there, and his job is to protect you from things that you either cannot or you have decided you are unwilling to deal with. Let me give you an example. Little kids, when they're toddlers, in fact, I'll tell you how tragic and horrific this can be. When little kids are toddlers, they are completely helpless. And they are focused on only one thing, which is to survive. And the only beings in the universe that can help them survive are their parents, especially the mother. And so when the mother, let's imagine that you've got a really fragmented mother who gives birth to a child and raises that child and is not the most loving parent, maybe is a cruel mother. In order for that toddler to survive, that toddler has to worship her mother as though she was God. So when the dysfunctional mother does something hurtful or destructive or really awful to the little toddler has no choice but to, first the rage will come out towards the mother, and then that little toddler has to turn that inward and blame themselves. Because if they express the rage towards their mother might abandon them or kill them. So this is what unconscious rage is. So to ask a question like that, and I'm not trying to attack you, it just shows a superficial understanding of it. It shows that you don't understand the power that is in there. To look at it as, I just went and did, a little trimming around, and I used a broom. It was a little tool to just sweep things up. So you're asking to use your unconscious rage like a little gardening tool, as though you just have the power. Let's just take my rage and do this with it. And that means you don't understand that you have no power to deal with it. So this 2,000-pound gorilla, this King Kong, has been given instructions to keep that rage bottled up inside of you, away from your conscious awareness, because you have told the gorilla, you said, I can't be angry at my mother because if I am, she'll kill me. So you have to hold on to this rage and not let me see it or hear it or feel it. So what happens is when you get older and somebody like me says you need to be conscious of your unconscious rage, then you go, oh, okay, well, I wonder if I can use that. And you have no awareness of how horrific it is and how powerful it is, and that there is a being far more powerful than you, meaning your conscious mind, that has this rage bottled up. So you can't just simply go, okay, King Kong, let me have that rage. King Kong says, no, you told me that I was to hold on to it, and I'm going to do that. So when somebody like me comes along, or when something happens in your life, or when you start going towards your true soul desire, this rage starts to come to the surface, and this giant gorilla is fighting to keep the rage down. And when you start asking questions like, why am I angry? Or, you know what, why did my mother do that? Or, when you start asking those questions and you start to feel that rage, the enormous gorilla instantly becomes incredibly clever and starts throwing out little things to distract you so that you won't ask the right question. And this is one of the biggest things that I deal with as a teacher when I work with students one-on-one, and it happens every time. There hasn't been one time where it hasn't happened. At some point, their rage, because I teach them how to go after their true soul desire, and they start to do that, their unconscious rage starts to come to the surface and they can no longer hold it in. And they go through that same process they went through as a toddler, where they have to make a decision between, do I hate my mother or do I hate myself and survive? And because I am the symbol of that awareness, they get angry at me. And I actually am very encouraging that when we get to that point, I say, oh, so you're angry at me now. Good. Let me have it. Tell me all the reasons that I am, whatever it is that I'm doing wrong, or why you're angry with me, or why you hate me. Please. Because if they're able to tolerate their rage towards me, which is what's called transference, they're really angry at their parents, but they transfer it onto me. If they can tolerate the rage that they're transferring onto me, and I give them a different experience where I actually reward them for being conscious of their feelings. As long as you don't attack me personally, you can have whatever feelings you want. When I reward them for that, if they're able to tolerate that, then what's going to happen is that they're going to feel the pain. They'll get past the rage and they'll feel the pain, the hurt that comes when somebody has betrayed you and harmed you and all that. Then you can heal. And then you can make decisions which will propel you further toward achieving your highest soul desire. So I'll be honest with you, I don't believe you that you know what is going on with your rage, because if you think of it as a tool that you can use, then you don't understand what it is. Because the only way to deal with unconscious rage is to eventually become aware of it and then push past the rage and get to the pain that's underneath. This is the question. People ask the question, well, if it's so easy, so simple, go after your soul desire and be successful, why doesn't everybody do it? This is why. Because that pain, the sadness of being abused, hurt, rejected, is so horrific and so intolerable that people would rather live with the rage in an unconscious state than to become conscious and work through it. This is why people die of cancer. It's because the cancer is a representation of the unconscious rage that has been driven into the bodily tissues. And it's the cancer destroying the tissues is the rage, the person's self-directed rage destroying them. And for them to heal from that, they would have to first be able to tolerate having rage towards whomever it was in their life that was supposed to take care of them, that they can't tolerate feeling like they're murdering somebody with their rage. And then the worst part is to get past that and get to the pain. The pain of not being loved, of being rejected, or whatever else it was. And that pain is worse than the pain of dying of a disease. And that's why people die of disease. Does that make sense? So when I talk about becoming aware of your unconscious feelings and aware of your unconscious rage, please know that I'm not saying it in a superficial, cavalier way. I am well aware of how horrific it is. And I do not judge people when they get upset and they walk away from me, which is, from my perspective anyway, they're walking away from their own evolution. I don't get angry with them. I don't take it personally because I understand. I know how horrible it is. And maybe I know what I've gone through, but I don't know what everybody else has gone through. I can't know what that's, there are things that people have gone through that I can't even imagine. And so for me to judge them would, I don't know what it's like. But the end result is still the same. I was thinking about this today. I think about this a lot, but I was thinking about it, was it today or yesterday? My life partner passed away almost a year ago from breast cancer. I still am not over it. I know people go, well, of course you're not over it. Well, I want to be over it. I'm tired of it. But I'm not. I'm not over it. And whenever I find myself feeling sorry for myself, why did she die? Because she was perfect. Perfect. She was the perfect person for me, aside from the dying part, which is kind of a deal breaker right there. But aside from that, she was perfect. So when I start thinking about wanting to date again, I go, nobody's ever going to be that perfect again. And then I start to feel sorry for myself, and it's not a lot of fun. But it doesn't change anything in terms of I only have this one life in this body. And the color of my beard tells me that time is running out for me to enjoy this body as much as possible. So every minute that I spend indulging in being miserable and feeling sorry for myself is just wasted time and wasted energy. That's different from mourning. Mourning is different. There are times I actually have to, in the shower, I need to weep like a child just to get the sadness that comes. It gets less and less now, but there are times I just got to do that. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the indulging in feeling sorry for yourself. This is why I attack victim mentality so hard, because it is such a waste of time. It accomplishes nothing. So, moving on. Now, maybe there have been there wasn't some questions there, or maybe there's some more questions here. So I think we got a few to Vargas Twirl. I don't know if you're new or not. If you are new, welcome to the channel. Question: if dwarves exist in the subconscious, does that mean they don't exist as physical beings? No, that doesn't mean that. If you have watched from the beginning, which maybe you haven't, maybe you've come in a little later, I talk about how dwarves are emotional beings that oftentimes can be manifest in the physical realm. So no, they can be subconscious beings and they can be physical beings at the same time. So the more that you work with me and watch my videos and read my books and all that, you'll find that I deal with reality from a holographic perspective. Things are not one or the other. They are this and that. They are symbolic and they are real. They are subconscious, whatever. They're subconscious things and they are physical things at the same time. We live in a hologram. We don't live in a two-dimensional drawing. Jessica Johnston, I normally don't do this, but I'm going to do it because this is a valuable train of thought here. I guess it's more like I would like to believe that I am aware. Hearing the truth is helpful, so that's good. I would like to believe that I am aware also, but it's a process. You know, one of the sad things that the New Age tradition, which is the same as the Christian tradition as well, has superficialized things. To be spiritual in the New Age tradition is just to focus on love and light, which is to deny your feelings, to deny your pain. Makes everything very trivial. This is why, if you go back and watch the video I did on the, what is that person's name? Abraham Hicks. I normally don't talk about other teachers, but I thought it was valuable to talk about what she teaches. And she trivializes the secret. She trivializes manifestation, which is why it's so popular. If I was more trivial, I would be far more popular. But she trivializes it in that she says that you don't have to take action. And she literally says, almost this word for word. You don't have to take action on what makes you happy. You just have to think about it and indulge emotionally and feeling good about it, and it'll come to you. And that's not at all true. The first part is true, which is you become aware of what it is that makes you happy and don't focus on anything else. Just focus on what makes you happy. The second part is then you have to take ruthless action towards achieving it, and that will be challenging. You will run into the 200,000-pound gorilla who has orders from your toddler self to prevent you from going after what you truly want, because if you go after what you truly want, you'll piss off your parents, and then they won't love you anymore. So this is why people, sabotage themselves. And this is why people who are, and how many people do you know that are like this, who follow the secret, who are still poor, but they love listening to Abraham Hicks, and they are addicted to going to those seminars and seminars on the secret. And yet if you ask them, they're still struggling because they're being told they don't have to take any action. And they're being told that if they have negative feelings, that's bad. You should only focus on positive feelings. But the fact of the matter is that if you have conflict surrounding your soul desire and you take action to achieve it, you're going to have a lot of negative feelings about it. You're going to have a lot of fear. You're going to have a lot of guilt. A lot of the rage is going to come up, and then you're going to feel guilty about that, and you're going to want to stuff the rage down, and you'll find that not taking action on what you want is the easiest way to avoid the uncomfortable feelings. And so you just go to seminars and you just try and feel good all the time. But the feeling good, when you get that inspiration of what is it that truly makes me happy, and the inspiration comes, and you get this feeling of, yeah, I can do that. I can totally do that. That is a safety space that the universe gives you. The universe gives you a little safety space to feel good and inspired about it. That safety space and the feeling of inspiration is meant to get you to take action. And our ancestors used to know that once you got past that safety space, that it was a lot of hard work and it was a lot of dealing with uncomfortable feelings. But they didn't care because they made a vow. We have the word now in English, truth. Truth now means factual reality. Is it true that the sun is in the sky? Is it true that you stole from, Mr. Smith? So before truth, there was sat. Sat comes from the root of the verb to be. That's why in Spanish the verb to be is ser. Comes from the same root. And in English, Middle English, we had sooth. Forsooth. Sooth meant the truth of essence, truth of being. We no longer have that word for truth anymore because we don't operate from that, because we operate from our intellect in modern times. So we want to know, is that literally true or not? Is the sun literally in the sky? Is it literally round? Is this, am I literally holding this cup? When truth used to be truth of being, truth of the self, truth of the soul, truth of essence. And the word truth that we use now used to be the word troth. And troth means your vow. We don't live by our vow anymore. And so when in the past you became consciously aware that something gave you joy and that you made the decision to go do that or be that, you want to become a world-class surfer, or you want to become a ballerina or a musician, the sat of that, the truth of that essence is that it gave you joy. Then in that moment of inspiration, you made a vow. You pledged your troth. You pledged your troth to your soul desire. Once you pledge your troth towards something, it doesn't matter how you feel. Because when you pledge your troth, it means I am going to do this or I'm going to die trying. That is your troth. That is why when the British royals get married, they pledge their troth to each other, which is the same as saying, I commit to you until death. So when somebody says, I'm just living my truth, they don't really know what that word means, because now that means I'm living whatever it is I'm feeling in the moment. Hey, that's my truth, man. Don't get me wrong, I have nothing against people being honest in the moment. But when you live like that, it means you can change your mind whenever you want. I deal with this all the time, again, with students, and I've done it. I'm no different than any of them. That's why I can walk people through it, and it doesn't faze me or bother me or hurt me or any of that stuff. Somebody gets excited about what they want to do. I've helped them become aware of what it is they truly want in their life, and they make the decision to go after it, and then they call me a week later and they say, I've been doing some thinking about it, and I know I said I wanted to do that, but now that I think about it, I think it would be more practical if I did this other thing, which, I don't like that as much, but, I'll make more money doing, and then of course I have to remind them that that's not how this works, and that you made a decision. So it makes me wonder, now that I'm talking out loud, maybe I should turn it into a spiritual thing, that when somebody becomes aware of it, they have to do a ritual and pledge their troth to their soul desire. And then, no matter how difficult it is, they have to follow through. No matter how frightening or painful or unrealistic it is. Anyway, I don't know how I got on that, but there you go. Let's see if I have any other. Oh, there's some more questions up here. Donna Marie B333 question: do types or locations of cancers correlate to chakras? Probably, but to me, that again, that's a little. I don't have an expertise in that area. It sounds like a very intellectualized question. It's far easier to focus on what part of the body represents. For instance, the liver is where we deal with resentment. So if somebody has cancer of the liver, it means that they have metastasized resentment. So that's the way to look at it. I wouldn't try and confuse it by bringing chakras into it. It's too intellectualized for me. Donna Marie B333 question continued: being out of alignment or chakras that need more energy work? So let's explain what chakras are. Chakras are not just energy points, and if we magically work on the energy points, it'll all be balanced. It doesn't work like that. Remember that we become out of balance for one reason, and one reason only. We become out of balance when we are not in alignment with following our true soul desire. When you become out of alignment, meaning you act against the integrity of what your soul wants in order to please other people or fit into society or whatever else, then you become fractured and you're out of balance, which means that your chakras are going to get out of balance, your three dantians, your 5 elements, your mind, your 3 minds, all of these things are going to become out of balance. And then, like Western medicine likes to do, is it likes to go after the symptoms. So if you ever watch television and you see the commercials for, whatever the new, medication is, the largest part of the commercial has to do with them saying all the potential side effects, which include things like death. One of my favorite phrases is, and don't take this if you're allergic to that, and don't take, medicine X if you have this disease. And in some cases, death has happened. Or some really horrible other disease has happened. And that is a legal term, which is, this is something that has been legalized in the courts of law. The drug companies have lobbied people in Congress to be able to legally say this, because what they don't want to say is the truth, which is, and many people have died from taking this this medicine. So instead, they've asked and legalized to be able to say, and in some cases, death has happened. Because when you hear that, you don't hear, oh, that's just something that's happened. It's not a direct cause of the medicine in question, right? So point being is that Western medicine likes to attack symptoms. And sometimes attacking the symptoms, again, is just like taking drugs or alcohol to avoid your feelings. It gets shoved deeper into the unconscious mind. It doesn't go away. You get a brief respite. You don't feel it, but it's still there, and it does something worse. So the disease gets put, the imbalance gets pushed deeper into the tissues, which then creates an even worse disease, which means you have to go get another medication to deal with that symptom. So you're just playing whack-a-mole, trying to deal with all these symptoms. You're not dealing with the cause. what I'm saying to you is that based on my experience and in my belief, you can choose to disbelieve it or not, but and I'm open for something else to come along and talk me out of this. But my experience and my observation has led me to the belief that the first and most important step to getting balance is to follow the thing that gives you the greatest joy. When you do that, everything else will eventually get aligned, including your chakras. So I find that thought process of, so should we align the chakras and that'll fix the disease? I find that to be a superficial trying to deal with the symptom. It's a little deeper than, taking a pill, but it's still the same kind of assumption there that out of balance has happened. You know what I mean? If somebody's out of balance, it has happened. It hasn't happened. It's a direct result of the choices and the actions that they've taken, either in this life and or in previous lives. And there's only one solution. That's why the title of the book that I recommend is The Secret Shamanic Commandment to a Perfect Life. And in that book, I say there is one commandment and only one commandment. And that is that you follow the joy of your soul. Okay, so, now let's talk about what chakras are. Chakras are not just energy points. Chakras deal with kundalini. There's two types of energy. There's kundalini. I'm going to use the words that are most popular. Kundalini and chi. Better way to say it is kundalini is emotional, psychological energy, and chi is life force energy. People confuse the two. They are not the same. They are stimulated by each other. If you do a lot of life force energy work, you oftentimes will stimulate the kundalini to rise. If you do a lot of kundalini work, you will stimulate the prana, which is the Vedic word for it, the life force energy. But chakras are directly related to kundalini, not to life force energy. So if you're trying to balance yourself with life force energy and trying to align the chakras, like most people believe that, you're not understanding how these two systems work. They're different systems. The chakras represent states of conscious emotional awareness. The chakras aligning and opening are a direct result of emotional maturity. So you can spend all day doing kundalini yoga and getting in certain positions and the this and the that. I've done it. And you will stimulate kundalini, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you will achieve awareness. These are hacks to get you to connect to your emotional immaturity. When you do that, focusing on this chakra here and saying this, that, then what's going to happen is that you will become aware of your emotional immaturity and you will fix that, which will then open the chakra. It's not because you're moving kundalini up your spinal column and the chakra is opening. That is an illusion. That's not how it happens. Kundalini moves up the spine when you become emotionally mature. And each one of the chakras has its own realm of emotional maturity. The root chakra is about physical maturity. Physical stuff. So that's what little babies are. Little babies are root chakra. They're all about give me a blanket, give me food, give me this, give me that, give me security. So people who have lower chakra issues are greedy and they are violent and controlling because they feel insecure. Once they become secure, their root chakra becomes stable and they no longer need to become violent or controlling. And it moves up to the sexual chakra. Sexual chakra is about interaction with others on a superficial level, which is why the first thing we do when we meet somebody and we're attracted to them is we want to have sex with them, because we want to connect with them on a superficial level. It has to do with the superficial levels of creativity, which is why when people go to bars to hook up, they listen to very superficial pop music. It's creative, it's music, it stimulates the second chakra. But you don't go and listen to Tchaikovsky and look to get laid you go deeper. So Tchaikovsky is different level, a more mature level of creativity. The third chakra, the navel chakra, is about power. And this is the person who wants to become king. This is your identity. So people who have an identity crisis have a problem with their third chakra. When their third chakra becomes fully opened, they become self-sufficient, and they also become accepting of others. The fourth chakra is the heart chakra, which has to do with community, which is why the heart chakra is so focused on in cults. Because cults you're dealing with the heart chakra, but on a superficial level. And, in Krishna the Krishnaites are a perfect example. They are so wrapped up in everything is Krishna. And, if you talk to somebody like that, that's what they'll say. Jesus freaks do the same thing. Everything is Jesus. Jesus is the one true God. This is the heart center. This is what the Sacred Heart of Jesus. So there's no coincidence to all this. It's because they are working on their identity in the community. And so you become lost in the community, and the thing to do is to get everybody to become part of your cult. Once they realize that you get a deeper understanding, then you get to have your identity and people have their identity, and we can be loosely affiliated, but we don't have to all be following under the almighty whatever it is. The throat chakra is about being connected to infinity. This is the monk on the mountaintop who is lost in meditation and doesn't care about the world. This is where teachers come from. Teachers speak from this chakra, which means that they have now gone past the group mentality, and they are now, it's just them in the universe. And so they speak that truth. But they're not there yet either. So those of you who look to me as a teacher, I'm obviously very verbal. I'm here. This is where I am. This is where I live. Once I get past this, I won't need to teach anymore. I won't need to talk about it. I will go, oh, don't worry, you'll figure it out. I'll get to that point. The third eye. The third eye chakra is about sight, spiritual sight, and now I'm talking because I'm here, so I talk about this. I don't really know what I'm talking about anymore. I can't even begin to tell you what goes on up here. Okay? So this has to do with emotional awareness. So trying to use the chakras to fix a physical problem, it may work, but it would mean that it's a result of your emotional immaturity that is doing what? That is fracturing you away from following your true path. So again, the easiest thing to do is to follow your joy, follow your true path, and then all of the blocks will make themselves aware. You will then deal with them and you will become aligned. Okay? So I don't know if I answered your question or not. Yeah, so it's not that you need more energy work. Energy work in and of itself won't fix things unless you use that energy to what? Become more aware and more conscious, more mature, and take action towards your dharma, your orlog, your path. That is what I'm teaching. Maybe I'm wrong. But it all comes down to that. If you do that, everything else will have to be dealt with and be aligned. Otherwise, you won't be successful. You will be stuck. If you're a person who is constantly stuck in misery or poverty, and you are taking action towards your soul desire, don't worry. It just means that they're coming up. The gorilla's doing his job, and he's trying to divert you from what is intolerable for you. You just have to keep doing it, no matter how frightening it is. And eventually, you will overcome it. And then you will have what it is you think you want. And then you'll have a whole new other thing to deal with. John M. question, what are your thoughts of paganism? John M., welcome to the channel. I assume that you're new. My thoughts about that question is I don't like people asking me questions about things that are what I don't teach. So my thoughts are I would prefer that you ask me about what I teach, because then I can give you a much clearer, more profound answer that will help you. When you ask me about other religions or other teachers, you are asking me to potentially badmouth somebody else, and I don't want to do that. It's disrespectful to me because it says that you don't want to ask me about what I teach, you want to ask me about something I'm not teaching. It's disrespectful to whomever you're asking the question about because I might say something negative about them. Now, if I introduce, like I talked about Abraham Hicks, it's because there's something in it there's a message in there that I need to get out, and this is a good way for me to talk about that. But that doesn't mean I want you to ask me about other teachers. This is disrespectful. So my thoughts on paganism are, why ask me that? Why not ask me something about what I teach? Dean Evans, question, which Norse deity is most closely associated with Venus? Freyja. And her brother, which is just the male aspect of the same energy, Frey. Skyclad Faye, question, how can you deal with this rage if as soon as you talk about it, you are told to stop the victim mentality? So there's an assumption in that question, which is that if you're talking about rage, you're operating from a victim mentality. The only way you're operating from a victim mentality is if you talk like a victim. Victims don't talk about rage unless the rage they're expressing is they're doing so to justify being victim. I understand your question. But again, Skyclad Faye, we've run into this before. What is in that question is some major codependence. And I don't know if you have a counselor or a therapist, or if you go to a 12-step group that deals with codependence, but I recommend it because I can tell by the question you don't understand the difference between becoming conscious of your rage and expressing it and the rage that you feel because you feel trapped. You feel like a victim and that makes you rageful. You don't get past that. So when you're able to actually identify who you're angry at. See, here's the thing. Codependent rage is a result of somebody who is in conflict about going after what they truly want, but they are stopping themselves from going after what they truly want because they don't believe that somebody in their life, even if it's just an idea in their head, that somebody or something in their life won't approve or won't allow them to do it. And so they have to make a choice between giving that person what they want or going after what they want. And when they're in conflict, they get stuck in the middle. And it is a place of rage. So you should be rageful. The rage is trying to get you to separate. So if you feel trapped, it means you are choosing to stay with that person or that situation. And if you choose to stay in that situation that is intolerable for you, then you will have this perpetual victim mentality rage. I have never, to my knowledge, ever victim mentality shamed somebody who was honestly acknowledging the rage that they have towards somebody. And as long as the rage is about, I've chosen not to do what I want in order to please my husband or my wife or my father or my mother or my society. or my religion. If you become aware that you are choosing to stay trapped because somebody else won't let you do what you want to do, then you're going to go, fuck them. I'm going to go do that. They don't have to like it. And then you have to deal with the pain of being alone, the pain of leaving them, the pain of becoming aware that they've never accepted you and loved you for who you truly are, the pain of whatever other things they've done for you. Then you will have to experience the pain. But you will be making progress towards what you want. So if you're saying that, it means you're still in that place of victim mentality, but you have the rage going. And if you and I were to talk, and I keep saying this, if you get on the phone with me, I can get cut through this almost immediately. Because we're going to find out how, first what you're going to do, this isn't your fault, it's just the way this mentality works. The first thing you're going to do in the first 5 or 10 minutes is to justify to me why you're a victim. Meaning that you didn't do it, that something, circumstances or something did it to you. And therefore you can't help it. And I have to stay here, and I have to take care of my aging father, or I have to stay married to this person, or I have to do this. And you don't understand, and I can't help it. And then I'm going to tell you, no, you have a choice. You can leave. You can go do what you want. You're just going to have to own it. But you either have to own it or you have to make excuses and stay where you are. And for many, the thought of leaving that codependent relationship, which is making them rageful, or even the scenario, the thought of leaving that is intolerable. And they can't do it. I myself have chosen. I chose a long time ago that I would never allow myself any excuses for being miserable. And that I would do whatever I had to do, no matter how difficult. I have faced homelessness numerous times in my life. I have faced rejection and being shunned by friends and family members. I have been, and I am, even right now, I'm completely alone. I have no family members. I have nobody in my life. I'm just here with me. I do have some friends, but it's not like, I have any support group other than myself. That wasn't an easy process. I've done that numerous times. I did that when I divorced my wife. I could stay in that, in the pain and the sadness of the loss of my most recent partner. And I'm making the choice to separate from that. So you're going to have to make a decision to separate from something that you're unwilling to separate yourself from. And in order to justify it, you create a scenario where you're a victim and I can't leave. I feel for you, but unfortunately the universe will not co-sign that. And the way you know that is because you're miserable and sick and you have poverty issues. I'm not talking about you personally, in general. Somebody has those things going on, I know that's what's going on. They're in conflict with themselves about what they truly want, and they've allowed themselves to either create or accept being a trapped victim so that they don't ever have to face really leaving, whatever it is. Okay. So the answer is, you're going to have to learn the difference between actually owning your rage and being a rageful victim. Those are two different things. Hi, John Gillette. Welcome to the channel. So what I would prefer that you do instead of sharing your opinion, this isn't a free-for-all discussion. This is for people who want to know, who ask questions. So if you want to participate, you can ask me a question. If you want to share your opinion, you can do that on your channel. I'd prefer just to have the questions, because whenever people talk, the more people I have to scroll through, that takes away from questions I have to answer. And I don't know if you're asking a question if you don't ask a question. Ryan Sutherland question, will meditation on your soul desire help to reconcile unconscious rage? Meditation on your soul desire? No. The only thing that is going to reconcile, and I'm not asking you to reconcile anything, I want you to become conscious of it and work past it. I don't want you to sit around and meditate on your soul desire, because your soul desire, you don't need to meditate on it. Once you become aware of what it is, you go do it. Meditation, the question as you've written it should be asked at a Abraham Hicks seminar, because they will say, oh, absolutely, the more that you meditate on your joy, the more it will come to you. And then that's not my experience at all. My experience is that people who choose to sit around and meditate on their soul desire are people who, for whatever reason, are not taking action on it. So you can meditate on it, there's nothing wrong with that, but the only thing that really matters is, are you taking action to achieve it? And there is no such thing as a soul desire that does not require action to achieve it. Okay? Now, as I said, when you take action on it, you're not going to reconcile your unconscious rage. You're going to become aware of it. You will become conscious of it. And then the rage is designed to get you to take action. Anger is about getting you to take action. Anger is there for a reason. It's telling you something is wrong, go do something about this. The desire to get rid of the rage and not take any action is, again, an excuse to stay in what I call compromise land. There's 3 lands. There is fantasy land, which is what your soul desire is. I call it fantasy land because most of us only view it as a fantasy and we think it as being unrealistic. And so we leave it in fantasy land. I call it fantasy land because when I work with somebody, I take them to fantasy land and I ask them, in your fantasy, when you don't have to make money or meet anybody's expectations, and the only thing that you have to do is make yourself deliriously happy, what are you doing? And if people think it's just a fantasy, then they can say what it is. And they'll usually say, this is really silly, but, and when they say this is really silly, I already know I already know. They haven't even told me what it is. I already know it's their soul desire. Reality, real life as I call it, is where you say, well, I can't do that because I don't have the money and it's not practical and I'm married and my husband won't let me, or my parents do this, or my religion, or it's against the law, or the thing, or the blood, there's some reason why you can't do it. That's reality. Compromise land is, well, I can't do that, but I can, I can't become a ballerina, but I can, get some videos about ballerinas and I can watch those. And I wouldn't, I can do that job. I don't hate it, but that's compromise land. So you're asking me a question about how to stay in compromise land, meditating on your soul desire and trying to reconcile your unconscious rage. And I'm saying, go do it and feel the rage and let the rage drive you to go do what you want. So somebody asked earlier, how do I use my unconscious rage? That's how you use it. You let the rage make you so unhappy with where you're at that you go do something different. That's what it's trying to do. All right. Jean M. question. I'm new to here and I would like to know what your thoughts are about paganism. What, now you're demanding? I already told you I'm not going to answer that question. So because you're new here and you want to know my thoughts, you're going to demand that I answer you? No. Why do you care what my thoughts are about paganism? You obviously have your thoughts about it. That should be good enough for you. I have people who come to my channel who are pagans. I have people who come to my channel who aren't pagans. But John, you're going to find out real quick that people who try to demand that I meet their expectations as students, they're going to find out real quick that I don't operate like that. So I don't care. that that's what you want? I have no interest in answering that question, so I'm not going to. There you go. Ghost in the Machine question. Do our spirit animals have a specific role in our spiritual evolution? Yeah. Next question. Torn Legarf question. Can you help me understand my dreams along with my Orlog? Can I help you? Yeah, I can help you. I can't do it right now because I need to talk to you. If you want to find what that is, go to career.thunderwizard.com. And within that hour, I believe there's a 99% chance that I will be able to help you find out what your soul desire is, which is your Orlog. You taking action on it, that's a whole other thing. But in terms of finding out what it is, yes, I believe that I can help you do that. Jessica Johnston question. This is off topic, but how are cats spiritually associated with Freyja? I don't know that anybody's ever asked me that question. They are. Cats are Freyja's animals. I got to be honest with you, I just don't have an answer for you. Sorry. If I don't know something, I don't know it. All right, no more questions. I'm going to take a break. Probably will wrap this up. If there are any worthwhile questions when I come back, I will answer them. Okay, be right back. All right, let's see if there's any questions left. Torn Legorf question. I'm not even going to answer the question, Torn. I'm not going to answer that question. New to the channel? Come on. ask, if you really need to talk to somebody about that, and you've got some guilt about that. I mean, I'm going to remove it. I just find it's not even worth asking. Do you need to talk to somebody about that? Do you have some guilt? And maybe you should talk to somebody about it. I'm not going to answer that question. Okay. All right, so I don't see any more questions here. Let's see if I have anything left to say. So we talked a lot about the soul desire, and I like that because, as I, have made very clear, that I think that is the ultimate thing. I mean, the one book that I say, if you want to, the most important thing in life is that, one of my least popular books, one of my shortest books, which is The Shamanic Secret Commandment to a Perfect Life. I recommend everybody read that and live it. That's the practical thing that I want to talk about. I'll talk about some other things. Maybe this weekend we'll talk about gods, men, and demons, because that's a whole other connection. What I didn't get into was the thunder wheel, which is the 9-spoked, if you want to call it medicine wheel, you can. It's the 9-spoked medicine wheel that I have synthesized from multiple traditions, which show how the physical energy works when you're doing rituals. Here's a thunder wheel. And the thunder wheel deals with the 9 worlds of the world tree. And if you look on it, we've talked about it before, but if you go in the southeast direction, you'll find dwarf home. In the middle, you'll find Midgard, is where humans live. And in the northwest is where you will see where the elves live. The dwarf home is in the southwest. The southwest has been called the human door by the Taoists, who use the same 9-world tree, but they call it the Bagua. They call it the 8 gates. But each one of the directions of the 8 gates has the same energetic essence. They just use different words and different symbology for it. Same thing with the Vedics. They use the same 9 worlds and the 8 directions, and they have different, symbols, but the essence of the energy is the same. The Taoists call the southeast the human door. And so this tells you everything, because this is where the dwarves live. The dwarves in the mythology are said to have been created by the gods. The gods took the fabric of the universe, the life force energy, and created human-like dwarves. So dwarves don't look like little people, they look just like people. Dwarves, and that doesn't mean in the myths they look just like them. What that means is that the essence of what we consider to be human, which is our emotional nature, our subconscious mind, which is unique to humans, that is what makes us human. The dwarf essence within us is what makes us human. We see dwarves as being half human because they haven't completely evolved yet. And so they're not human yet. Humans have the dwarf nature, but they also are aspiring towards the elf nature. And so that's why the southeast in the middle is human beings, Midgard. In the middle is Midgard, and then in the northwest are the elves. It represents the trajectory of the human soul. And it is a two-way trajectory. The next one I'm going to talk about is going to be gods, men, and demons, which is representative of the northeast direction, the center, which is humans, and the southwest, which is the underworld or the unconscious. And that is not a two-way street. That is a one-way street. And we're going to talk about why that is. That is not the trajectory of the soul. The trajectory of the soul is from the southeast to the northwest. Okay? So I didn't talk about that, but that's, if you want to meditate on that, this is one of the reasons why you can work with the thunder wheel and meditate on the directions and on the worlds and what they mean, because they will teach you things about this. And when you learn how the energy works within, why is it that the energy works from northwest to southeast in two directions? And why is it only a one-way street from northeast to southwest? When you can understand those questions, you'll understand even deeper understandings about how energy works and how you can use things in ritual in order to achieve your highest awareness, in order to achieve your greatest evolution. So for that, you go to thunderwizard.com. A lot of new people on here tonight. You really want to learn what it is that I'm teaching? Go to thunderwizard.com and subscribe at whatever level you want. You'll get private videos about shamanism and ritual, energy work, meditation, runes, mantra, chanting, things like that, which will teach you from the ground up the basics of what true shamanism is, which is ritual magic. And not made up ritual magic where you're trying to force your will onto something. You learn how to flow with how the energy of the universe flows. And you'll understand on a deeper level the 5 elements, how the 5 elements work, how to use them, how to bring them into your body and to balance them in your body, which is another way to heal. But again, if you balance the 5 elements, you balance yourself. All of these things will take you to a place where you will have the awareness to know what your soul desire is, but then the one thing that will be missing is your act of will, which is to take action towards it. So there's one thing that's missing about the idea of meditation, yoga, spirituality, energy work. There's an assumption that if you do yoga and energy work and qigong, if you do it enough and gain enough energy, you'll become enlightened, and that's not the case. What those things will do for you is that they will give you enough energy and they will give you enough balance so that you will have the wherewithal of your awareness to know what actions you need to take to achieve your enlightenment. But the meditations themselves will not achieve enlightenment for you. They will only give you, the ability to know what actions to take. You will still have to face those actions, and you will still have to face dying to yourself in order to go take them. Because in order to achieve your soul desire, you will have to continually die to yourself. And this is what people are trying to avoid. Anyway, so that's a much longer subject. But we'll talk about that stuff another time. Check and see if there's any last minute questions, and if not, we will end it for this evening. Let's see here. Cynthia McLeod, question, can you please explain Odin and why the elves have to fight eventually? Are you talking about Ragnarok? Yes, I can explain that. There's one guy that keeps getting really pissed off at me when I say what I'm about to say. Ragnarok represents the transformation of this universe into a higher universe. And the gods will have to die to themselves. And the way the gods die to themselves is, in the mythology, they fight against their nemesis. And they are killed. They kill each other in that fight. Ragnarok, both sides, they destroy each other. It's the opposites coming together to destroy and recreate. So that's why they have to do that, including Odin. Odin has to evolve also. And I say this and people get so upset. Odin's never going to die. I'm sorry. Ragnarok is very clear. The gods die. But it doesn't mean that they cease to exist. It means that they transform to another level, just like when we die. Listen, I am so freaking aware of this. Because one of the biggest struggles I have in my mind is how to conceptualize what my partner is now. She's dead, physically. Person that I knew, this person right here. I don't know if you can see her. This person right there is no longer. She doesn't exist anymore. That brain, that heart, whatever it was that made up her physical self is gone and will never exist again. I will never see that person again, ever. I'll never hear her voice. She exists. Her essence exists in a form I do not comprehend. I can understand it superficially, but when it's your other self that dies, if you can just superficially say, oh, they're a spirit now, oh, they're in heaven, oh, they're an angel, then I question how deeply connected you were to them. Because I struggle on a daily basis trying to understand what she is. I finally gotten to the place where I accept that she is, because she sends me little things like, on our anniversary, I found this in the street. Look how big this is. I found this, what do you call it? This amethyst in the street. I walked to go to my meeting where I go with my friends we work on stuff together and help each other out. And I stepped out of the car, and directly under my foot, I actually stepped on it, was that, on the curb. I mean, what's the likelihood of that? There are some other things I could tell you that I know she's here. She's giving me things. And clearly she's conscious. She has a consciousness and awareness of who or what I am and what we were. So I've come to accept that. Other than that, I don't really know what she is. So the gods are going to go through their transformation, and they will die to themselves, and they will become something else, something that they can't comprehend yet. Does that answer your question? Donna Marie. I was talking about my book. Okay. Okay, so Jean M., please write questions, so I know you're asking a question. Then what would be the difference between the two, so that maybe I can understand? I don't know what you're talking about. If you're going to write a question, assume that I don't remember the context. So you have to write a whole question in context so I know what you're asking. Otherwise, I don't know what that means, so I can't answer it. Cynthia McLeod, question. I have a rune set that has a blank called Odin. Should I use this rune when doing a 9-world spread? You can if you want, but that blank rune is an addition. That's not part of the original Futhark. I never use a blank rune. I don't recommend people use a blank rune. I can't say that it won't have a meaning or do something, because I've found that the gods and the runes, will respond to your honest working with them. I wouldn't use it. I would get rid of it. But you can use it if you want. Christy Williams, question. Can your soul desire change throughout your life? Why do you ask? Are you not aware of what your soul desire is right now? Would a new soul desire every 2 to 3 years mean you have yet to identify it? I don't know. Why are you asking? Here's how, again, ask the question better. A better way to ask the question is, I don't know what my soul desire is. I keep changing my mind every 2 to 3 years about what I want to do. That's a more honest question. When you operate from that, you will get an answer. If you operate from your emotions, if you ask a difficult question, a frightening question, which is from your emotions, you are more likely to get the answer to come to you without even having to ask somebody else. When you ask it like that, when you remove yourself from it and ask it hypothetically like that, then you're in your intellect and you're a lot farther from the answer. I don't know. My experience has been that my goals in life have changed. I used to want to be an actor. I worked really hard towards that. I think I fulfilled what I wanted because I don't need that anymore. There was periods of years where I wanted to live alone in the wilderness, And I thought that was what was going to make me the most happy until I did it. And I lived in the woods in the middle of the forest on the last house on the road that had electricity beneath the most wild mountain range left in the lower 48, where grizzly bears and moose and bald eagles and wolves and all kinds of other things were still roaming around my cabin back there. I did that, and I lost the desire to live in the middle of the wilderness pretty quickly. I don't do that anymore. And now I'm living the one thing that I have always dreamt about every night of my life, which is surfing. There has never been a time in my life when I haven't dreamt about surfing. The only time that I stopped dreaming about it was when I was in a marriage that I couldn't stand, and I had given up, and I was very physically ill because of how rageful I was subconsciously. I was depressed, but I was unconsciously rageful. And that was the only time I stopped dreaming about surfing. So then my experience is that when I surf, there's nothing in the universe that makes me happier. And I live for it. Every day I'm watching the waves, and I plan my whole life around the days that I'm going to go surfing. That's my sole desire. Because will yours change? Probably. Does it change every 2 to 3 years? I suppose that's possible, but that sounds pretty like a lot. So I wonder if you're not in conflict, but I don't know. I'd have to talk to you to find out. Skyclad Faye question, Gina, means the difference between heathenism and paganism. I don't care about that difference, Jean M. Why don't you ask a heathen or a pagan about those things? I don't identify as either of those. So why ask me about that? Both heathens and pagans and non-heathens and non-pagans and people who don't identify. All of those people follow me and practice what I teach. So that question of what heathenism and or paganism is, and should you do either one of those, means nothing in terms of following what I teach. So ask somebody who cares about that. There are people who care. I am not one of them. Pagan means, you want to know the meaning of pagan? Pagan means country dweller. And it was a name given to people who lived in the countryside in the Roman Empire because they were slow to adopt Christianity. The people who lived in Rome, the educated, the elites, the people who lived in the cities, they were the first to become Christians. And so they would talk about the non-Christians as the stupid, dumb hicks, the pagans. That's why I don't identify as a pagan. I'm not a stupid, dumb hick. I think I'm very well educated, and I think my beliefs are very well thought out. Heathen means the same thing. The heath is out on the heath, out in the boonies, out in the sticks, out in the country, out on the field. The heath. Same thing. In England and in Scandinavia and in other places where that word is used, the Christians would call the polytheists who practiced the indigenous tradition, they would call them country folk. Same as calling somebody a hick or a trailer trash or a hillbilly or a redneck. It means somebody who lives out in the country who's probably uneducated and isn't very smart and doesn't know a hell of a lot, and in a negative way, that stupid person probably is still following the old path. That's why I'm not a heathen or a pagan, nor would I call myself that. You wanting to split hairs between the two, why call yourself that? You can if you want. I know that people who use those names aren't consciously using that, but that's why I don't use it, among other things. Okay. Yeah, Jean M., that's a perfectly good question. I'm just the wrong person to ask. Ask somebody who cares and knows. If you want to know about what I teach, I'll tell you what I teach. Torn Legarf, question, do I need my Vedic chart before I talk to you? I don't know. Do you want to get a reading from me? Then you would go to astrology.thunderwizard.com and then I will give you your Vedic chart. And then I can tell you. If you want to get a private session with me and you already have your Vedic chart from somebody else, that's fine. You can bring your chart and tell me what's what where, and I'll tell you if I have an answer, I'll give it to you. Jedi Black Knight, question. Can we chant a rune name when closing down in Celestial Qigong? I think you already asked me this question, and I think I answered it. Jedi Black Knight, you are one of the most diligent and committed people I have seen when it comes to practicing Qigong. You, my friend, will surpass me in terms of your power in Celestial Qigong. If you keep on the path that you're going, you will most likely be a master Qigong teacher. Having said that, I want you to follow the directions that I give. If I thought that chanting a rune when closing down was a good idea, I would teach that. Please follow my exact directions. When you have mastered Celestial Qigong, which I have no doubt that you will, then you can, in your own mastery, experiment and find out what works. And then when I am long gone or when I'm doing whatever else, you can stand up and say, I have an improvement on Celestial Qigong. I chant this rune and I do this and I've learned this. And I will bow to you and I will say, if you really want to learn some really powerful stuff, go train with Jedi Black Knight. This guy has a whole thing that I don't even know anything about. Until then, please stop complicating things. Just do what I ask you to do. If it's unclear, that's different. Other than that, I ask you to follow the directions as given. Having said that, I want you to understand, as I'm chastising you for once again overthinking things and trying to do more than what's in front of you, I want you to understand that I really respect what you've accomplished. And Jedi Black Knight, he keeps me appeased. I don't always respond to him in his emails, but I read them every time he sends me an email about his experience with Celestial Qigong, and every time he passes into another level and he explains to me the amazing things that he's experiencing. I mean, I read that, and I really truly respect what you've accomplished, and it is very makes me happy as a teacher. It's what teachers want. A true teacher wants a student to take what they teach and go and master it more than they have mastered it. That's what I want. I want you to master what I teach more than I do. I want you to know more about it than I do. And some of my students are already doing that, including Jedi Black Knight. Okay, what else? Jedi Black Knight question, do you still offer the paid customized 1-hour sessions? Well, yeah, that's what this is. I should probably have other URLs for it, but career.thunderwizard.com is where somebody goes if they just want to buy a 1-hour session. And I don't care what it's about. Astrology, Qigong, counseling, I don't care what it is. Career, soul desire. You can go there and you can have a session with me. Yeah, you can discuss it with me. Again, if you've gone beyond my understanding, I may not have thoughts for you. If you're doing something that I have taught, I'm going to have thoughts about how to do it. But if you've created your own exercise based on a rune, I would love to hear it. I will probably not have anything to say because, you're doing something I haven't done. I don't express opinions about things I don't have any experience in. So, but other than that, I'd love to hear about it. Sure. All right. And that is, by the way, the appropriate thing to do. Even though he's coming to me as his teacher, he's created his own thing. He's still going to pay for a session. That's the appropriate thing to do. It shows respect. It shows respect not just for me, but for the tradition itself. And that's the way to do it. Even if, as the teacher, I learn from it, or I say, you're on your own. If I have thoughts, I'll obviously share it. But that's the appropriate thing to do. He's doing the right thing. All right. I don't see any more questions, so I think we're going to end on that. So I think next time, if I make it here tomorrow, we're going to talk about gods, men, and demons. And we'll talk about the northeast to the southwest. And that will be also a very interesting discussion, I believe. All right. Talk to you guys soon. Thank you. By the way, thank you everybody for showing up, for watching. Thank you for all of the support that you give to the channel. And yeah, I would not be the person I am without you, and I just want you to know that. As much of an a-hole as I can be, and I know that I can be, just know that I appreciate all of you, and I'm really grateful that you're here. All right.